I've submitted over 300 applications in my last job search. I did this and cataloged all the data, and as a data analyst and data engineer, I'm here to help you optimize your next job search. What are the things you need to know to get you to spend the least amount of time to get the opportunity the quickest? At the end of this, I'll also provide you with insights that have been given to me from CIOs and CEOs, as well as insights that I've learned along the way, so we can help you navigate your way to your next job. Lessons from the data. Through all the cataloging and research and refining all the data, putting it into data analytics tools and presenting charts and reviewing the data, there was two major takeaways, really three, that you could take away from reviewing the data. The first and most primary thing that you can see from the data is be early. Believe it or not, it's so easy. And if you think about it, it works just like social media, right? You have a competitive advantage if you are that much closer to the proximity of the posting date and time of that job post. Why? Think about it. When you post something on social media, you're quickly coming back within the first couple hours to see what type of responses you're going to get. In doing this, I found even when I was on LinkedIn, and this may have obscured some of the data, I found when I was on LinkedIn, if I applied to a position within the first couple 2-3 hours, I was getting a response rate that was absolutely insane. Now, mind you, I wasn't doing any analytics and cataloging or identifying these particular instances, so I can't be certain from the data that these were truly the most responsive approach, was getting that quickly. But subjectively, I was noticing a clear distinction. I would get responses and called back, text, emailed almost immediately if I was within the first 2 or 3 hours of a job posting. And it makes sense psychologically. If you're going to post something on any job or on any social media platform, you want to review it quickly to see what were those responses. So if you go ahead and take a look at the actual data, you'll see that 69 of the positive responses, which means I got called back, text, or messaged back to inquire more or talk to me more about either presenting me to the hiring manager or scheduling an interview or talking about salary to see if this job's going to work at all. From those, 69% of them, or 69 of them, were coming from days where I applied the same day as the actual job posting. And 92 of those responses that were positive, 69 of them were from that first day. So it makes perfect sense that if you're going to be searching and you want to spend the best time for your bang for your buck, look for those jobs that posted that day and get as close to it as you can. So here's a couple pieces of advice on how to do that and structure it in such a way that you can actually get into a routine of being one of those first people to respond to those job postings. Number one is determine a time in which you can, at the top of every hour, at the 30 minutes of every hour, at the 15-minute mark of every hour, that you can refresh a very niche subset of your job search that you are looking for these parameters, for these skill sets. And when you do that, it's not going to happen often. And maybe you get no returns for the first day or 2 days. But when you do a very niche, you can be one of the first ones to apply, which means you will get in front of the person who put up that job posting. The next is be relentless. Don't settle. Just continue to apply, continue to work hard, continue to push forward. Understand that it's a numbers game. You have to throw in the work in order to get the returns. And so I was able to do, for this particular study, we cataloged 321 applications that were pushed out. Of them, I only got 92 where they were calling back to inquire more about me and whether this was going to work out for me and do a pre-screening conversation. From there, I was only able to present it to 14 hiring managers. And from there, I was only scheduled 5 interviews. From those 5 interviews, if you think about it, 5 interviews over 321 applications, that's a response rate of 1.5%. So if you want to get into that interview, you want to do that, you got to do the hard work. If you haven't put in at least 100 applications, then don't expect to get an interview. It's just basic math. You have tons of these positions that are just pseudo or fake positions that are being posted. They're not even real jobs. In addition to that, you have to put in the work because you're competing against the entire market space. So from here, let me go into some of the things that were observations from the data as well. One is that I think I was subjectively moved towards pushing most of my applications earlier on when I saw response rates going up. So this may have actually skewed some of the data and showing that, hey, look, I had a higher response rate because most of my applications were closer to the actual posting date. So from there, those things have to be taken into consideration. If I was to do this over again, I was to do it purely from a empirical data analytics perspective, I would make sure that I would spread evenly across the distribution, my applications on each respective job board that I was using. And I would do so in such a way that I would empirically and intentionally apply to jobs that were only spaced a certain number of days postings. So that way I have an even distribution across all the applications for the days that were from the job posting to the date of the application. If I was to do that, you would have a much more clear picture of the actual responses in the data. But these were the things that I found, and hopefully they can help you. Lessons from coaches. If you don't have a life coach, if you don't have somebody that's advising you or giving you some counsel on how to navigate your career or other portions of your life, I would highly encourage and recommend you get some. If you want, on our website down below, we have some life coaches that'll help you navigate some of the rigors of life. From that, I can say to this much. I've had some CEOs, CIOs, and friends in executive roles who've given me incredible advice on how to advance my career and perform different job searches. So, one of the number one things that was probably the best advice I've received was from a director of business intelligence, my first position. And he had told me, Ian, one of the best pieces, one of the things I wish somebody had told me when I had started my career was this: make sure that as you go through the projects in your regular working day, make sure you continually and perpetually build your resume as you develop your career. I said, in doing this, whenever it comes time to look for work, your resume is already ready. It's there. You have all the information. You don't have to sit there and drudge up all the things. How did I add value here? What project did I work on here? You have it already cataloged. It's already presented. It's already set up, and you can go. So if you get terminated, or let's say you came to a place where your boss is advocating that you perform things in such a way that you just morally just don't feel comfortable doing. And so you've determined it's time to just look. You have it ready to go immediately, and it's there. In addition to that, one of the other pieces he recommended is to create a master resume. In doing so, what this master resume does, it can be several pages long. You can put in all the projects and all the business value that you've added. And then what you get to do is when you go to apply to a very specific company or a very specific job application, you can just copy and paste and cut out whole sections and create a resume on the fly that's tailored specifically to that job posting. It makes it very quick and very easy to do so. Number two, one of the other pieces that was one of the most helpful things for me in my job search and looking for the next position. This person referred me to basically say, look for the person who has posted the actual job posting, and then try to email them directly with your resume referencing that job posting. So the advantage here is that you are getting deference to that person who's posted the job because you've reached out in a way that no one else has. You've gotten acknowledged doing some form of due diligence. This can be done in just looking at the job posting. If it says the person's the person's name on it, you can look on through LinkedIn. You can go on to the actual website of the organization, see if you can find them that way. There's plenty of different ways in which you can do a bit of research just to find that person and send them an email directly. And if you need to, you can actually use the way that people pattern Active Directory, which is the standard email setup for email configurations, and find a couple emails from somebody who works at that company, and then just apply that naming convention to that email, and then there you go, you have their email address. So that's another way which I found has been extremely successful. I've been able to get a hold of people and organizations that you would be surprised just by following what the actual Active Directory pattern is of emails from that company and then using that. The next is, while you're looking for work, start studying for a certification. What this does is it enables you to actually put that on your resume and say, hey, look, I'm actively studying this topic. So you can say that you have a degree of experience in an area that you want to expand your career without actually doing it. And then when you get interviewed, you can actually go through it and be very candid and honest and say, I'm learning this, I'm studying it for the certification. I'm not there yet. Happy to entertain any questions I've learned through the studying, but they're not going to be held to the standard of somebody who's had years of experience on it because you're being candid, you're being honest, you're just being forward and saying, hey, I'm studying this, and there you go. And that's been one of the greatest ways that I've been able to get into and expand myself into positions that had a skill set that I was lacking that I wanted to move into. The next is become searchable. If your LinkedIn is not up to date and the job boards that you're using is not properly up to date and populated with the correct information, you're not going to be seen as much. In fact, on the most recent job searching that I was doing, I found that they had skills on Indeed that I was not updating. And then once I started updating them, that they said, hey, we noticed this job posting. The person who's posted it is looking for these skill sets. And if I hadn't posted or if I hadn't checked those, they were informing me and I didn't even observe it, didn't take the time. Make sure those are updated. I saw a huge response rate just increase once I was fully updated on that Indeed job board by having my skills in alignment with the job that I was applying to. So make sure you keep LinkedIn and those job boards up to date. In addition to that, I'd say probably 90% of the 30 emails I get a day for job postings are coming from job boards where people have said, we observed you, you have these talents and these, or you have these skills in these areas and this experience. Would you consider this job? And I can tell you that the best job that I've ever landed came from somebody reaching out from a job board that was up to date. I was earning the most comp rate that I've earned as a contractor. And it was one of the best gigs I got. And it all came from just having my information up to date. And it came at an opportune time. So these were all the lessons that I had learned from coaches who had given me advice on how to advance my career in very unique and specific ways that have done me favors incredibly. Lessons I've personally learned in my career and journey on finding positions. Number one is follow up on hot and warm leads. I can't tell you how much of a difference this makes. In one instance, I was able to actually interview all the way with a particular company and found that they weren't able to make some of the accommodations I wanted to and needed in order to accept the position. So a month later, I went ahead and called them up, the hiring manager. He said, call me if you ever need anything. I really enjoyed talking to you. I'd love to hear back. If you change your mind, let me know. My mind hadn't changed. If I called back a month later, I said, hey, just checking and following up. Maybe something's changed. Maybe you have a different role in mind. I would still love to come and work for you guys. I like this company. Would love to work for you. And what I ended up finding, he ended up saying, oddly enough, just an hour ago, someone left the company that reports directly to me, and it gives me the latitude to bring you on with the parameters that you originally asked for. Let me make some phone calls, and I'm going to get back to you within the next couple days. I ended up landing the position. Now, obviously, in this instance, it was specifically with the hiring manager. But you have to think about as it relates to recruiters. So if you're a recruiting or consulting firm, they get their money and they get paid from the companies that actually provide them the positions, not the individuals who they recruit. And so they spend the majority of their time trying to service those organizations, the people who pay them. It makes sense. So what ends up happening is you may end up giving them an application, talking to them, they present you to a hiring manager. If you don't follow up with them, they're not going to be reaching back and looking at you. Only in rare instances will they come back and say, hey, because you landed such a dramatic impression on them. But follow up on warm or hot leads. Call them up and say, hey, remember this position? You pushed me forward to the hiring manager. I was just following up to see, has anything come of that? And then secondarily, have you found any other positions that would be a good fit for me? So I can't tell you the number of times and stories I've heard where just that simple and basic follow-up lands you that interview or that position. Next, be bold. Know what your value is, know what your worth is, and don't settle. One of the things I've learned is there's been a lot of different positions. Of those 92 positive responses, Many of them, I was the one who said, hey, I don't want to move forward. I don't want to waste anyone else's time. This is what I'm looking, this is what I'm expecting. And I set my standards high. And sometimes you'll be surprised if you set your standards just a little bit higher than what you're thinking. And as long as you can adjudicate it with some basic market research that shows, hey, look, the value is there, you'll be surprised to see you'll actually end up pushing your career and yourself a little bit further just by being bold. Just stretch yourself a little bit, set your expectations high, and go from there. The third one is an absolute must for your resume. So, number one is explain how you added value to the business when you put a list of project on your resume. If you just say I did X, Y, and did this with this tool, what the hiring manager wants to know, having been one and employed many people, what they really want to know when looking at a resume is how can this person translate their skill set into adding value to me and the organization? And if you can't succinctly summarize that, when you do, your resumes will stand out far above and beyond the average resume because you're saying, I know how to identify value and I know how to take my skills and apply it to value. So make sure you show on this project, I use these tools, but I added this business value and make sure it's readable. The next is make sure your resume is scannable. What that means is it actually is going to be not automatically processed through some AI algorithm or through some software that's basically just going to say, hey, look, it did a Google search on your resume and it didn't find your particular skill sets that are in alignment with this job. So make sure your resume is scannable. It makes Google search fit this job posting. And then is it formatted and structured in such a way that a hiring manager can review it in 30 seconds to a minute or less? A lot of these things where you just see these huge blobs of text and things are not done in such a way that you can easily navigate through the resume, you're not helping yourself. I can't tell you how many times I've just burned through resumes just because it was just massive chunks of text. And sometimes they were going for the scannable, which is just, does it fit the Google search? But that's not what you need. You need, is it scannable also for the person who's going to read it and go through and say, hey, I'm reviewing 50 resumes and I only have about an hour to hour and a half to do so. And so in so doing, I'm going to basically give 30 seconds to a minute per resume. And that's a reality. When you're in a hiring manager position, you don't have much time. You're going to burn through tons of resumes and you're only going to spend 30 seconds, maybe 2 minutes tops on a resume to get a short list. And then lastly is make sure it's edited. Send it to a handful of people you know and have them review it and have them see what they have to say. And it doesn't matter if they're not in your industry. Go ahead and just push them out and say, hey, would you mind doing me a huge favor and just editing this resume? And that'll make such a big difference in just having it polished. I remember in particular, when I was entering outside of college, interviewing for one of my first positions, I interviewed like 25, 30 people. And this one guy comes up and goes, hey, you spelled this city's name wrong that you were in for such and such. And that reference, it threw me off in the interview because it wasn't done well. Obviously, the guy was looking, can I be an approachable person? Can he find an error in my work and then continue to come on? But you would be surprised. Your first initial work product is your resume. So when you give that to somebody, you need to make sure that it's fully edited and you're presenting your best because that's what they get to see. So if you want to learn more about resume building or how to go through these job searches, go ahead and check out this video down below.